Welcome back, class. Today's lesson is going to be on probability. Probability is, by definition, probability is the chance in which you'll have a favored outcome. And so, because we're in a unit about proportions, we can describe it like this. We can describe it by saying the number of favored outcomes divided by the number of total outcomes will give us our probability of a favored outcome. Let me put this into an example so it'll make more sense to you. Suppose that you're flipping a coin. And suppose that your favorite outcome is to get heads. And the other side is tails. You don't want tails. So the favorite outcome here is heads. So you're going to figure out by tossing it a few times how many times you get heads over divided by the total amount of times that you tossed it. And so let's do this a few times. It landed on tails. Again, tails. 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 Heads. I flipped it enough times, and I've come to the conclusion that we have flipped heads about 23 times out of a total of 50 flips. So I flipped the coin 50 times, and I got heads 23 times out of that 50. All right, so 23 out of 50 is my favorite outcomes out of total outcomes. Now, probability doesn't stop there. Probability then asks the question, what percent of the time will you get heads if you were to continue to do this? Now, probability doesn't tell you, it tries to make a prediction, so it doesn't tell you that it's going to be right. It says it's most likely that you'll get heads a certain percentage of the time based on what you've already done. So here's the problem now. We are going to change this fraction into a percent. This probability problem, or this proportions problem, will give us the number over 100, or the percent. And in this situation, x equals 46, or 46%. So the number of favored outcomes, the percentage of the time that we get heads, is 46%. If you want to think about it in a bit of a different way, 46% is like saying if you flipped the coin 100 times, it'd be heads 46% of the time. All right, now in the probability problems that you'll have in your assignment, you'll be taking a percent like this, 46%. You're dismissed, you can go. See you later, guys. You'll be taking a percent like this, 46%, and you will be using that percent to predict. And so
Noel
the question...
Drocht, please come to the upper office. Noel Drocht, please come to the upper office.
And so the percent will tell you something like this. If we have flipped the coin 500 times, how many times was it heads? We know that we get heads 46% of the time. That was from our last problem. So what is 46% of 500? For that, we need a proportion problem. %46 is 46 divided by 100. And we set that up equal to some number divided by 500. And how do you know that this is the correct way to set it up? Is with percentage, you have 46% is part of a whole. So it is part of the whole 100%. You're looking for a part of the total 500 flips. You're looking for what part of the total was heads. So you got part over total, part over total. That's how you know. You put the x on the top of the fraction with the 46 and the 500 on the bottom with the 100. So now you solve this, and what you'll have after you cross multiply is x equals, I figured it out. X equals 230 after the cross multiplication. And so what that is saying is you would have gotten 230 heads if you were to flip it 500 times total. In summary, what you're going to do to solve a probability problem is first, you're going to find a % likelihood that you will get a certain outcome. And so if it's heads or tails, you would find how many times you get heads divided by the number of times that you would have flipped it total. That is the % likelihood. Then you use this % to predict future outcomes by setting up a proportion problem, where on one side you have the %, and then on the other side you have an unknown, and you have the total amount of times that you completed, the total number of trials that you went through. So if you have any questions, please ask me whenever I tell you to ask me, whenever my future self tells you to ask me. I don't know what my future self will say, otherwise I would say it right now, but ask my future self. And also have a great day.